What's going on, everybody? It's Teach coming at you with my 2024-25 preseason NFL power rankings. We're going 32 all the way up to the, albeit predictable, but to the number one team in the NFL. Through my eyes, really excited to break down all these squads. I do this normally during the regular season. That may be changing, more on that at the end of the video, and I want to get your thoughts on that. But, of course, we all know how power rankings work. Love to hear your thoughts. Who's your favorite team? And give me one team you'd move up, one team you'd lower in these power rankings. Love to see those thoughts down below in the comments section. But without further ado, we go ahead and kick things off. And just so you know, the blue line, when I do this throughout the course of the season, that just denotes what changes have been made. We'll talk more about how frequently I'll be doing these during the regular season and how much you guys want to see these during the regular season. But I'm going to have the Carolina Panthers in at 32, and I do think this is a team that is getting better. I still think Ejiro Evero is a good defensive coordinator. Just change it, the edge spot in specific gives me some pause. I think we're going to see an improved offensive line, specifically with the two guards they signed. That, in turn, should make the run game better. Jonathan Brooks helps with that. Bryce Young, I'm optimistic about him going into year two. And I think they've improved the pass catcher situation. I think Canales is an upgrade from a play caller standpoint. So I know it sounds like I'm really hyping this team up, and there's a lot of things I'm excited about moving forward, but this was a team that had the number one overall pick. They didn't pick there, but it was their pick. And there's still a lot of holes to be filled. So I'm optimistic about the future. I just think it's the biggest thing to come out of this year is confidence going into year three with Bryce Young. Hopefully he plays well this year. We see him mesh with Canales, and we can go into year three of Bryce Young with some hope and optimism. Another offseason to retool this roster, but too many holes on defense. Still some question marks there at offensive line, and they're leaning on a lot of new pieces and young pieces from the pass catching standpoint, and then throwing Brooks in there as well. But still, again, optimistic about the future. And, of course, this is Hopium season, all 32 of these teams. I am optimistic about going into the season. So doing these power rankings is really tough, specifically these last 8 teams, because I don't like making anybody feel too bad. Then we get the Patriots here at 31. I get the Brissett decision. I think May look pretty good in the preseason. And I don't know. I go back and forth on it. Ultimately, the player needs to determine whether they're ready or not. But in some, different circumstances, I can take into account the surrounding situation, specifically the Patriots' offensive line. I think Drake May played behind a bad offensive line at UNC, and you really don't want to see some of those habits compound upon themselves, or really, you don't want to see things that maybe did worry some people at UNC become something that is a staple and a bad habit that he develops at the next level. So I understand. I don't think it's going to be great with Brissett, that being said, because the offensive line is still a bit of a mess. I like some of the young receivers like Polk and Baker, but you're still leaning on these young pieces that just might not be ready to produce day one. I am optimistic about both those guys because, to me, they were still high floor guys. And the run game's going to, I think, be okay. And then we'll see how Alex Van Pelt plays out as the OC. I'm fairly confident about the DC or the defense and a defensive play caller, Gerard Mayo, or whatever his if he is the official defensive play caller. But I like his touch on that defense. Feels like it's gonna be a lot more of the same than what we're used to in New England. Really wish they could have had Christian Barmore, and we'll see what happens there. Blood clots are obviously a tough thing to gauge. So if they can get him back sooner rather than later, that would be huge because Barmore and Gonzalez, those two young Christians on that defense, I think those are the cornerstones of this team moving forward on that side of the ball. Then we get to the Cardinals here at 30. I think this is a team that could definitely be scrappy and better than people are expecting. Their win total was one I almost jumped on back when I saw it at 6.5, 7.5. I feel like 7 and 10 feels about right. So again, 7 and 10. Why are they down at 30? I just need to see it before I'm ready to plant the flag and put them there into the 20s. I think Jonathan Gannon will do a good job, just like he did last year, of having that defense punch above its weight class. They did add pieces to that secondary, specifically someone like, a Max Melton and Elijah Jones, two draft darlings of mine. I think that reinforces that corner spot exponentially. Edge still gives me pause. Love to see Darius Robinson get back on the field, hopefully just after 4 games. I think he helps with that. And hopefully, he's the tide that raises all ships, right? He becomes the defensive lineman that gets a lion's share of attention from opposing offenses. That in turn makes Gardeck that much better, and so on and so on and so forth. And David Collins is an edge rusher, et cetera, et cetera. Then on offense, I'm optimistic. I mean, this team, part of the reason I was interested in the win total to start was, okay, well, this team didn't do too poorly. I think, 4 wins last year, 3 wins? I can't remember. But with a lot of the season being played without Kyler Murray. So what does it look like with a full year of Kyler, a full offseason too for Kyler? And I also think Drew Pensing's a really solid offensive coordinator, someone who's going to start garnering attention over the next year or two as a head coaching candidate. So I'm optimistic from that standpoint. And, kind of like Darius Robinson, Marvin Harrison Jr. is certainly the tie that raises all ships, right? Because Michael Wilson is the number 2 receiver. Trey McBride really is the number 2 target. Everything starts to get a lot clearer when you have that dude like a Marvin Harrison Jr. And I also really like Trey Benson. Offensive line still have some questions there, too. So there's a few points on this roster where I'm really starting to get excited. But there's a few other areas where I'm like, it can be better. I just need to see it improve. And if it does, man, like I said, this team could definitely be scrappy next year. The Denver Broncos then coming at 29. I thought about flipping a few of these teams. It's tough because when you compare 29 to 30, there's not much of a difference. But when you compare 25 or, for argument's sake, 24 to 32, then you start to see a bigger difference, which, statement of the day right there. But nevertheless, the Denver Broncos, a nice little bit of a run middle of the season last year for that defense, but number 2 corner, edge, still some things I'm a little hesitant about, but I do think Vance Joseph's going to do a good job. Also, turnover at safety with Justin Simmons gone, so I'm not saying it's going to be as bad as it was early in the year, but I'm also hesitant to buy in it's going to be as good as it was during that 5-game win streak last year. And the defense, I think Bo Nix is going to have a high completion percentage. You can run this offense. Javonte Williams is a solid PPR play just because I think, the orientation of this offense is going to be to play underneath and time up our deep shots. It's going to come down to, like Tim Patrick's gone, Troy Franklin, we'll see what happens with his career, but I wasn't high on him. Haven't seen a whole lot of positive remarks being made about him. Maybe time will tell a different story. But, I'm kind of looking at this, and it's like Courtland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, who, honestly, Josh Reynolds might lead this team in receiving yards by the end of the year, and then Marvin Mims. So, there's things to be excited about with that receiver trio, but also things that make me concerned. And when you compare that to Minnesota, who, you look at that receiving, trio of Hawkinson, Addison, JJ, and it's just worlds different. So, I don't know. Because of that, I'm having a hard time buying into Denver. I do think Bo Nix gives you a relatively high floor. And if Vance Joseph can kind of work his magic like he did midseason last year, this team could definitely be competitive. They do play in a really good division, too, which hurts. Then we get to the Washington Commanders here at 28. Question marks at edge at corner, and that's just a really hard thing for me to be able to move on. Really, that defense, I think they did a good job kind of bargain shopping, patching it up, specifically at linebacker, but those marquee positions, I don't think they have marquee players just yet. In the offensive line, same could kind of be said there. I think Sam Cosmi's a stud, but that's kind of the one guy on that 5 that I'm really excited about. I think Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson Jr., there's a lot of excitement in the rest of those pieces. I also think Noah Brown, not a bad big body target for them to add. Kind of a different type than they have, considering Luke McCaffrey probably a slot guy, big body slot. So I like Brown being a big body outside guy for them. And I'm really high on Ben Sinnott. I have him in just about every fantasy league, so I'm hoping now for hoping for a big year out of the rookie. Then we get to the Raiders at 27. Antonio Pierce had this team playing really hard down the stretch last year. Some turnover on the O-line, but I think there's going to be some consistent strengths here, right? This defense, I think, is going to play really hard under Pierce and be really well coached under Patrick Graham. We'll see what the cornerback situation kind of plays into that and see how great this defense can be. But that being said, hopefully Tyree Wilson takes a step forward in year 2. You do bring in Christian Wilkins. I'm so excited about that side of the ball. It's going to come down to Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback play. And then if that's rough, what does this team do at the deadline? Because I could see a team like this moving on from Devontae Adams, free enough future cap space. It's going to hurt them, post-deadline this year, but a better draft pick, more cap space. It may set you up better down the line, too. So question marks at quarterback, a little bit of a turnover there at O-line and running back, but I still think this team's going to be able to run the ball pretty well. I think that's going to be a staple of what Antonio Pierce wants to do. Really excited about the defense. A little iffy right now on the offense. Giants, not necessarily to say the same is true. I'm really excited to see what Malik Neighbors looks like, but I do worry about the guy throwing the football, that being Daniel Jones. Hopefully it's a bounce-back season. I think a big part of his success 2 years ago was tapping into his rushing ability, so I'm kind of excited to see that Brian Daboll's taken back over play calling, had a lot of success using Josh Allen as a runner, and I think ultimately he just kind of gets it. If this team's going to maximize its offense, Daniel Jones is going to be a big part of the run game. I also think that helps mitigate the loss of a Saquon Barkley, because Devin Singletary is just not as good as Saquon, but with a mobile quarterback, you can kind of eat into that and kind of replace him through the aggregate of 2 solid rushers, plus Tyron Tracy, who was able to avoid that scary injury. Eric Gray, another guy I liked as a hard downhill runner out of Oklahoma. So they have some pieces there, but hopefully Neighbors is the guy that makes everything else fall into place. Wan'Dale Robinson can hopefully be a solid slot receiver for them. And then Theo Johnson's kind of, hopefully they can get some big impact out of him. Maybe in kind of like an isolated seam runner kind of role, but I think adding that element makes everything else that much harder to just play it honest. And then the defensive side of the ball, I'm glad they brought in Adoree Jackson. Makes you feel better about a 1-2 punch of Jackson and Banks. Burns plus Thibodeaux. Dexter Lawrence, to me, probably the second best defensive tackle in football and the best true nose. I'm excited about all that. And I'm also excited to see Tyler Nubin and that Shane Bowen defense. And I think Bowen's going to have this team play the run a lot better than they did last year. That was certainly something that Brian Daboll is open for, per his remarks on Hard Knocks. So things to be excited about, but ultimately it comes down to Daniel Jones and what that's going to look like and where he can take this team. Same can be said here at 25 for the Saints. There's things about this roster I like. Marshawn Lattimore, really good player as long as he's there and as long as they don't move on from him. Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan's still solid. Carl Granderson coming off a breakout year. Pete Warner, really solid player as well. Another young corner, as well as Paulson Adebo taking a step forward last year. Nice young piece in that defense. The offense, Derek Carr. What can Clint Kubiak get out of Derek Carr that Pete Carmichael couldn't last year? I also think the back half of last year was better than the first half, but also turnover at receiver when Michael Thomas there, which most Saints fans are probably used to that by now. But Rashid Shaheed, can he step up as a full-time number 2? A.T. Perry, what does that look like? Cedric Wilson, is he a big part of the mix here? Things we're on the kind of wait and see, and then also the running back situation. The biggest thing I'm keeping my eye on right now is the tackle play for this team, though. So I like this roster, but then you see massive question marks there at tackle, Talise Fuanga and Trevor Penning, and I really like Fuanga, but to me it made no sense to flip those guys, and hasn't been the best preseason, but time will hopefully get these guys better. And that offensive line solid. I think Carr can play well, but he is just typically a guy who is really he goes where the offensive line goes. If the O-line's bad, Derek Carr tends to play pretty bad. So hopefully those tackles can step up mid-year. The Vikings coming at 24. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy out for the year, so that changes things. Sam Darnold tends to get out to a hot start, so I'm sure if I do this in season, they'll move up the board early on, but then I could see by mid to end year, we see the real Minnesota Vikings. But I still like the receivers. I think Aaron Jones is an upgrade there at running back. I think Ty Chandler there is the number 2, then instantly kind of looks better. Like the tackle tandem. And the defense this year finally has more ammunition for Brian Flores to not have to play this gimmick scheme of leading the league in rushing just 3 and leading the league simultaneously in rushing 6. Now he doesn't have to do that. He could play a little bit more traditional, or he could still lean on his old, MO, especially now with Stephon Gilmore there of let's play man press and I'm going to blitz. And hopefully you got the answers for it, the opposing offense that is. So I'm really excited to see, because I think he's still going to be diverse, but he can also just, hey, it's 3rd and 15. Let's rush 4 and drop 7 into coverage. So let's play this one conservative. So with that improved edge rush, stopgap solution here in Stephon Gilmore. Wish this team could have gotten the opportunity to see what Kyrie Jackson could be and Mekhi Blackmon in year 2, but circumstances out of their control don't let that be possible. So I think they did a good job getting Gilmore. This team could have been better. Would have loved to see J.J. McCarthy, but ultimately I think they're still going to be competitive, kind of where they were with Nick Mullins last year. Let's get on to the Chargers then at 23. I'm buying this Harbaugh hype. I tend to do this. He was my number 1 head coaching candidate and the top hire for me this cycle. So yeah, this is the type of team that I'm going to buy into, leaning into my prior takes. But I also think Harbaugh is a maximizer of quarterback play. I think this is about the time we start to see Justin Herbert go from really good to great. Even with the receiver play a little murky with no Keenan, no Mike Williams. Availability questions also kind of came with those guys. And I'm not going to say Ladd McConkey is going to be, as good as Keenan Allen was in his prime or anything like that, but I do think he comes with a relatively high floor, field stretching ability, separation skills that will play right away. Josh Palmer's a solid across the board B to B plus level player. Not going to wow you with any one trait, but can do a lot of different things. And if there's anybody who can maximize Quentin Johnston, I'm convinced Jim Harbaugh, will be that guy. And hopefully, Greg Roman gets this run game to a height that it hasn't been at during the Herbert era. Defense, corner still scares me, but also could we see the best year of Derwin James' career? Maybe. Could Bosa and Mack run it back one more time and kind of get back on track? More so Bosa there. Can he get back on track? Maybe. Harbaugh's the guy to do it, so there's things that could definitely turn this team around pretty quickly, but there's also extenuating factors that may leave this team middle of the pack. I could see where this team ultimately is spending a lot of time on the defensive side of the ball next offseason. Then the Titans here at 22. Will Levis my QB2, so I'm obviously excited about that. Plus the Bill Callahan effect on that O-line. Optimistic about where this team's going forward. Plus, receivers and corners are my favorite players to watch. And this team invested in those 2 positions like no other, right? Like Calvin Ridley, Chidobe Awuzie, L'Jarius Sneed. And Tyler Boyd. Don't forget about Tyler Boyd. All right, sign me up for that. I also think this defense is going to play pretty strong. I don't think that's I think that's maybe not getting properly rated right now. May not have a standout edge, but I think T'Vondre Sweat plus Jeffrey Simmons, who I'm hearing is as lean and as quick as he's been, and I think with a nose tackle like T'Vondre Sweat, playing Simmons and letting him be a gap shooter at that 3-tech spot could be really, really dangerous. And kind of a low-key sleeper there for Defensive Player of the Year if you're looking into that market for a decent bet. That could be an intriguing one as well. So reshaped defense, couple of additional offensive pieces at the skill positions, and then the Bill Callahan effect. Can he take this team from worst offensive line in the NFL last 2 years just somewhere average? If so, I think Will Levis is going to take a huge step forward here in year 2. And I think this team's going to continue to rise up the ranks. The Steelers come in here at 21. Man, this is another team. Like, I could have put the Steelers all the way down to 25. And I say that as a Steelers fan. I know it irritates a lot of my other Pittsburgh brethren, but I'm not going to buy into it with Russell Wilson, a guy who was benched for Jarrett Stidham last year and played even worse the year before that. And I know contract situations were, a part of that. But if it was Stidham versus Fields, would this have been a camp battle? I don't know. Also, as much as I wanted Fields to win the job, that was just because, hey, you turned down the 5th-year option. Let's see if he gets better over the course of the year. I wanted Fields to win the job, but I can't say that he really... I think he did outplay Russell Wilson, I'll be honest. But he also played more. And it's not like he won it by a large margin to where, okay, you got to play him. So question marks are the most important position in football. I would argue question marks at the second most important position in football on wide receiver. Yes, GP's nice, but effort concerns and who's the number 2. It's going to muddy that water. And then this tackle situation, man, I just feel like I cannot buy into and have full confidence, man, because they continue to play Roger Jones at a position that he's just not comfortable at. Despite moving, you could totally move Dan Moore, and I feel like... just invest in your first. If someone's going to struggle, don't let it be your first rounder. Let it be the guy that you're ready to kind of replace anyways. Hopefully Troy Fautano comes back and kind of shores things up there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The defense can be good. TJ Watt's can make plays. Highsmith, Cam Hayward just got an extension. Yes, I get it. All that stuff is true. But Joey Porter Jr. got away with a lot of handsy play last year. We'll see if that happens. That could be kind of a variable that goes either way in a given year. And then Dante Jackson's never been a good corner in the NFL, so I have no reason to really buy into him at number 2. This is also a team that never really addressed nickel either, and I'm also someone who values nickel as high as anybody, maybe, who takes football this serious, So... yeah, just question marks at too many spots for me. I think they're going to have their strengths. They're going to be really good at those strengths, but where they're weak, Pittsburgh Steelers are very, very weak. Then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at 20. A lot of strengths coming back, right? Like they re-signed all those key fixtures, Baker, Evans, Antoine Winfield Jr. Hopefully Chris Braswell kind of, same thing I said earlier with Marvin Harrison Jr. company. Hopefully he can be that, high tide that raises all ships. Second round pick, little less likely that happens. Maybe it's also like Kalijah Kancey, bigger role for year 2, and that interior disruptor makes the edge guys look better. That might be your better, more feasible path to an improved pass rush. I also think Graham Barton's can make a world of difference. To me, he was one of the best run blockers in this draft class, and playing him at center for that scheme makes all the sense in the world. And I'm big on Rachaad White because of that. His vision has been great in the NFL, but I also think, a good center can start making those passes pretty easy to hit, those holes to hit, excuse me. So I'm buying into the Bucs. Some turnover there at corner, too, could potentially hold this team back, but this team also played really, really well down the stretch after a pretty rocky start. So what Tampa Bay team do we get here? So that's why I got them kind of middle of the pack here. Indianapolis Colts then at 19. This is a team that could potentially break out, and really the question mark to Anthony Richardson. Like the O-line, like the receivers, like the defense. Love Laiatu Latu there at addition. So can Anthony Richardson, a handful of starts under his belt, is he going to kind of play like a guy with less than a rookie's amount of time under his belt? If so, this team's probably middle of the pack. They'll still punch, give a pretty hard punch, and Shane Steichen's a good coach, so they'll be competitive. But if Anthony Richardson, figures it out by, week 6, and could potentially turn a corner, and you start to see, oh, there's that potential. This is a dark horse playoff team. Wish I could say more, but really, I just like a lot of what the Colts put together. It's just coming down to Anthony Richardson, which, by the way, I'm buying into it. I like Anthony Richardson. I think by week 6, week 8, hopefully he has turned that corner. Seattle Seahawks, this is like a darling team. I feel like they never left my top 12 last year, despite the record, but just such a well-balanced roster. And I think now with Mike McDonald, this is a team that's going to be playing above expectations versus the last couple of years with Pete Carroll. Maybe you could say this team was maybe hitting expectations, but probably falling a step or 2 below it. Geno Smith year 3, we'll see where that goes. I could see where teams are getting that much more data on Geno, can kind of figure him out. Also just that much older. But you also have Sam Howell kind of waiting in the wings. There's another team kind of like the Saints where it comes down to those 2 tackle spots. If this team's 2 tackles play well, and they're young tackles that I both liked a ton coming out of college, and when they're healthy, I think they generally play well. if they can do that and keep Geno upright, then I think JSN takes over as the number 2 target. Him and DK can be a formidable 1-2 punch in that Ryan Grubb offense. And especially with Ryan Grubb, like a lot of 3-by-1 sets when it comes to receivers at Washington. He'll leave one wide receiver isolated, and I hope that's JSN. I mean, it definitely can be DK Metcalf because size, speed. Let's go get that guy on an island, right? Like, but also JSN, clearly the best route runner on this team. And like, that's nothing against DK. He wins in different ways than JSN. JSN in a 1-on-1 route running situation, give me that guy all day. So I'm really hoping we see him have a breakout season. And then McDonald with that defense, Byron Murphy Jr., my top defensive player in last year's draft, Devon Witherspoon, another draft favorite of mine. I'm really pumped to see what that side of the ball looks like. Then we get the Jags here at 17. It's a new look wide receiver core, but in a lot of ways, I think the pieces kind of fit together better. Question marks again on the offensive line spot, specifically left tackle, but Trevor Lawrence did look pretty good this preseason, and hopefully he does take that step forward this year. Really, I'm hoping it's a step forward from Doug Peterson / Press Taylor. Press Taylor's been calling plays, but I really hope that this team gets off to a 2-4 start. That Doug Peterson just, meat on tape, you got to take over play calling duties. You got to be the guy there. Because otherwise, I think it's warranted to have a hot seat conversation with Doug Peterson because you get there, you were hired to fix Trevor Lawrence. So please fix this offense, So we'll see as we get through the course of the season. I could see it definitely being better. Defense, number 2 corner, Ronald Darby there. I think that could raise the floor, but also let me see it. And then that edge spot. Love Josh Hines-Allen. Love Eric Armstead. Can we get someone else to step up to? Because then that's when this defense goes from I think they're good to really good. And part of that might be using Devin Lloyd as a blitzer. He's a pretty good pass rusher coming out of Utah. And that's where I'm just going to trust Ryan Nielsen. He's, back-to-back years now. He's had a really good track record the last couple of years, improving some defense, especially last year with Atlanta. So I'm confident about Ryan Nielsen going into this year. And this is definitely one of those fringe playoff teams. It's going to be a tough AFC playoff window, but I do not count the Jags out whatsoever. All right, then we're on to the next group of 8 squads, the Chicago Bears. That's right, I got them in the playoff mix. I'm buying into Caleb. I'm buying into Shane Waldron. I think the offensive line's going to be solid. It's going to be interesting to see Nate Davis. He does feel like, at this point, the weak link on that O-line. So Bears fans, let me know, if he doesn't play well, what's the contingency? What does that look like? I'd be really curious. And then the defense, man, I think Matt Eberflus, once he took over play calling duties, things got a lot better. Some of that does coincide with the addition of Montez Sweat for sure. But also Jalen Johnson, I think, is a great scheme fit for that. You lose Kevin Byard, but I think you can live with that. You bring in Kevin Byard, you lose Eddie Jackson. Sorry, getting the safeties flipped around. But I think that's kind of, at this point in their career, maybe it's a step down, maybe it's a neutral move. And then hopefully Tremaine Edmonds takes a step forward this year. I think TJ Edwards has maybe outplayed him at this point. I'd like to see Edmonds take that step forward. And then another big part of this is Gervon Dexter, that interior pass rush. If Dexter takes a step forward, that defensive line starts looking pretty good all of a sudden. So I'm buying into it. All the pieces are really in place. Now it comes down to Eberflus to get the defense to execute and Shane Waldron to get that offense to execute because, number 1 overall pick, a lot of good backs, an improved offensive line with a lot of investment put into it the last couple of years, and 3 great receivers. Go make it happen. Then we get the Cowboys here at 15, a team that does feel like they're moving in the wrong direction. The offensive line's playing better than what maybe I would have expected. Once you told me Terrence Steele's, Tyler Guyton, their first-round pick out of Oklahoma, him at left tackle, BB at center, maybe not the places I would have played him, but ultimately the returns have been okay. Rico Dowdle, plus those, older running backs, I'll be generous. We'll see how that plays out. But really, that number 2 receiver spot, who can take some pressure off CeeDee Lamb? That's what I want to see this year. And can Mike McCarthy scheme these guys open? Because I actually think McCarthy as a play caller was better than I anticipated last year. Can he do that again this year? And then that Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer transition, I'm not saying it's going to be better or worse. It is going to be a transition. Zimmer, though, is a great third down play. He consistently had the Minnesota Vikings towards the top of the league in third down percentage. So if the Cowboys are winning on third down, you feel pretty good about, okay, can the offense do just enough to win a lot of games? And also, them and the Dolphins, the question is going to be, can they beat teams over 500? And that remains to be seen. So that's why I'm asking it. Buffalo Bills here at 14. I think the scheme and Josh Allen are good enough to elevate the receivers. And ultimately, I think they are taking a turn towards Kansas City's playbook. Hey, teams don't want us to beat us over the top. They're forcing us to play underneath. So let's take what they're giving us. And we'll become more of a yards after the catch offense, just like Kansas City. And then, hey, when we need to take that deep shot, we have a dude with an absolute howitzer. So, yeah, he's going to let it fly, and he can get behind. We have some guys who can still get behind the defense, i.e. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, who does exist, and Keon Coleman, who can certainly be that field stretcher from the outside as well. The defense, can Von Miller regain any of his, game from a couple years ago? His last year was rough. But if he can get a little bit closer to where he was 2 years ago, that bodes really well. And this team's always done a lot with that cornerback spot without major investments, specifically when Trey White hasn't been on the field. They've been able to make do. Can Sean McDermott do that again? I always have a hard time buying into that just because, again, I prioritize high-end talent at the outside positions, corner, receiver. But he's been able to make it work, so I have no reason to doubt that. But I just, let me see it. Also, Matt Milano being down, that one hurts too. And that's part of the reason they're at 14 maybe instead of like 12 or something like that. Matt Milano's injury definitely dinged him a couple spots. The Atlanta Falcons, look, I'll buy into it. I'm full on here. I'm buying into it. I like Zach Robinson as a play caller. Kirk Cousins in a dome. Sign me up for that. Drake London's a great scheme fit. Kyle Pitts, I think you can move them all around. Bijan, that O-line, absolutely. Raheem Morris calling plays on that defense, who now just adds Justin Simmons, Matt Judon. Now I really don't see any holes, maybe at linebacker, but the Rams have had holes there. Raheem Morris been able to work around that. I like the Falcons, guys. I know they're an easy team to kind of buy into, and like their odds to go over their win totals like -140. So like a lot of people are doing this. I'm not like cutting, making any new statements here, covering any new ground. But that being said, I think they put the piece together. I like the coaching staff now. It's a winnable division. I'm in on the Falcons. Los Angeles Rams, where Morris and Robinson just came from. Stafford, McVay, for me, it's as simple as that, right? If those guys are there, we're good to go. Puka, Kupp, Kyron Williams, those guys are healthy, then absolutely 2 thumbs up for me. The offensive line, McVay's kind of gone as his offensive line has gone, but ultimately I think they have the pieces there. Left tackle might be a bit of an issue. I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately call some veteran and try to make something work there, just as some injury insurance, Joe Noteboom, Alaric Jackson, so on and so forth. That might be the one problem spot, but otherwise, I think that O-line's okay, especially with the interior guys. They're going to run gap down into the red zone, man, and they had a lot of success with it last year. No reason to change that now with Corum and Kyron there. And I think the defense, obviously you lose Aaron Donald, but there's enough pieces there to replace the aggregate. Fisk first, year 2, Kobe Turner, who I think is going to get a lot of attention here, but Turner was a draft darling of mine, so I'm going to have faith that he gets better, even more so in year 2. And then Darius Williams, speaking of Trey White, he's now in LA. You bring Cam Curl in there, like new look secondary, but also with some returning faces in there. It's actually one of the better secondaries we've seen from them since they moved on from Jalen Ramsey. So I'm excited to see what that potential improvement also does for this team. Change the defensive coordinator too could be a little iffy. We'll see how that plays after the first couple of weeks for LA. The Browns, they go as Deshaun Watson goes. I like the offensive line. I like the running backs. I think Chubb's going to be solid when he comes back. I like the receivers. Jerry Jeudy, probably the best quarterback play he's got in his career, and I think him as the number 2 behind Amari Cooper. Sign me up for that. Another year of Elijah Moore, David Njoku, yards after the catch, Demon there. Yeah, sign me up for that, and I think it's one of the 2 best defenses in the NFL, in my opinion. One of the 3, maybe. So, yeah, sign me up for the Browns. It's just going to come down to Deshaun Watson. If he can play average, this team's in the playoffs. But if he plays above average, that's when this team can make a serious run towards the AFC Championship game. Packers coming at 10. I'm all in on Jordan Love. He was a guy I really liked coming out of Utah State. Saw him as a first-round guy. He was my quarterback for that year, albeit. But, saw him as a first-round guy. Dealt with the hate that the Packers fans, dealt me at that time, but it's paid off, and now all these young pass catchers around him. I wouldn't be surprised if Dontayvion Wicks just replaces Christian Watson this year. We'll see if he can stay healthy, but let's just say for the sake of argument, it's Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, and Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft. Okay, sounds pretty awesome to me. Plus Josh Jacobs is a pass catcher. Marshawn Lloyd is a solid compliment to him. Yeah, I like it, and they've always been able to make it work with that offensive line. Jordan Morgan's definitely an upgrade at right guard. I like Sean Ryan, but first-round investment, 6th-round investment, things like that happen. Give me the first-round guy. Then defensive side of the ball, it's hard to imagine Jeff Hafley being any worse than Joe Barry, right? I think they got the dogs to play a more aggressive style of defense, single high, cover 3, man press. These are the things I've been hearing from a lot of Packers fans, specifically man press, like Stokes, Jair, and then kind of Bullard there in the nickel. Sign me up for that. Or if you want to play cover 3 and McKinney, PFF's highest graded single high safety over the last 2 years, tailor-made for that cover 3, and then Javon Bullard's that robber bringing him in the box, he will feast there too. So there's a lot of flexibility you have with this team. I just love how the pieces have kind of come together for Jeff Hafley. You can tell the Packers were like, hey, need to change this DC stuff. What are the couple things you need? We're going to address that safety spot. You got it. This is your type. Let's go make it happen. And I think this is the year. How many years we've been saying this about the Packers? But I think this is the year where we finally see this Packers team become like a top 10 unit on that side of the football. All right, let's get on to the Miami Dolphins then at 9. I'm also going to move my box here as we get on to the next group of squads. But Miami Dolphins, really to a great scheme fit. Mike McDaniel just got the extension. Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and we'll see what happens with OBJ. Wouldn't be surprised if he shadow kind of retires right before week 1. And then Malik Washington comes the receiver 3. I've been drafting and stashing him in fantasy just for that. Big Malik Washington guy, very underrated guy. Just if he was bigger, he would have gone a lot higher in the NFL draft. Chop Robinson's been crushing camp. If Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips come back healthy and Chop Robinson's in that mix, well, look out. That's going to be scary. The interior defensive line's got some turnover. Calais Campbell's going to give you a solid, dependable player. Zach Sealer's super underrated. So I'm not too worried about that. Also, a change at number 2 corner that might ultimately improve that situation as well. So with Fuller there. So in a lot of ways, I think this team did get better, but I'm also, I don't know, this team tends to get figured out by mid-year. So I got them in the top 10 because, again, I think they're a good team. Week 10 on. Can the Miami Dolphins not get figured out, or can they have a counter to the counter? Like, I don't know. These are the things I just need to see from the Miami Dolphins, and can they beat a team over 500? That sort of stuff. Bengals coming at number 8. Joe Burrow. The Bengals, they were my MVP and Super Bowl pick last year. I might double down on it. Jamar Chase got me a little worried right now. They should just give him the Justin Jefferson deal like yesterday. So if they do that, then I'm all in. I am a little concerned about edge, right? Like, if Trey Hendrickson gets banged up throughout the course of the year, that might get a little iffy. Maybe they're a team that's trying to make a move at the deadline. Could they make a call to the Jets and be like, yo, Hassan Reddick, do you not want him? Maybe they do something like that. I'm also pumped to see Dax Hill at corner. It wasn't my first thought. I heard it from Mike Renner now at CBS. But once he had mentioned it during that draft, I was like, Dax Hill actually does have a lot of, specifically, slot corner traits, and that seems like where they might be playing him right now. So whether it's outside or inside, I like that a ton. Cam Taylor-Britt coming off a nice bounce back season, or good second season. We need a bounce back season at DJ Turner. Apologies for mixing up my my young CBs there. But if Turner gets back on track, Dax, Cam Taylor-Britt, we might be talking about one of the better young cornerback rooms in the NFL. Plus, I think Geno Stone, that's like bargain bin. Jesse Bates, love that. And then bringing back Von Bell for the communication aspects of that defense, I think that's huge. So I'm buying into it. I do have some concerns. Corner and edge, tough places to have concerns. But ultimately, I'm buying into the strengths of the Bengals being one of the best teams in the AFC for sure. I got the Jets just ahead of them, right? Because if Rodgers is healthy, that defense kept them in games they had no business being in. And honestly, if Rodgers pops his Achilles week 4, is Tyrod Taylor as bad as Zach Wilson? Nah, he's probably better, right? So even from that, it feels like you're already starting out on a better note. Plus, you bring in Malachi Corley. You spent a first-round pick at offensive tackles and insurance cost. Tyron Smith also in free agency. So you kind of improve that offensive situation. And, of course, Aaron Rodgers should be the biggest upgrade imaginable for this roster, going from Wilson to Rodgers. You see some of the reports about it's in shambles. I'll wait till I see it. Once I see it on the field, I could see a world where maybe it does go murky, right? Because, Hackett's a fake OC. He's a pseudo OC, but it's Aaron Rodgers' scheme and his offense. But we've also seen that work, i.e. Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. Tony Dungy has openly said, I let him do the offense. I took care of the defense. If that type of synergy can work here in New York, this team can be really, really special. It just comes down to what you think Aaron Rodgers is going to be. Yeah, it's a big injury for last year, but I still think he can spin it at a high level. So I'm in on the Jets. Eagles coming at 6. It's a complete roster. And, were they as good as their record at the beginning of the year? Probably not. But were they as bad as their down the stretch collapse was? No, either. So I'm somewhere there in the middle, and obviously skewing towards the very positive side because offensive line's still great. Tons of receiving talent. I think Jahan Dotson's actually a great receiver 3 for this team. He's an upgraded player over Devontae Parker and Paris Campbell. So love that. And then additionally on the defensive side, especially now with Bradbury hurt, good thing you invested in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So I hope those investments pay off. And also think Bryce Huff, if you're worried about him being a rotational edge player, can he do it on a full-time load? Well, why not just have a team that's going to basically play him as a rotational player, 450, 500 snaps a year? Why not have them sign him? So I love the Bryce Huff signing, and I think that's a unilateral move to Hassan Reddick, maybe even an upgrade. The strengths are still there for the Eagles. It's really going to come down to the sideline, right? Is Nick Sirianni going to get the team where they were 2 years ago? And if they have another collapse, then he's out the door for sure. Which I'd be interested to see. I don't know. I don't think Philadelphia would fire him mid-season or anything like that. But between Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, if you're an Eagles fan, who would be the interim head coach? I think it'd be Fangio. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down below. Then we go on to the top 5. Baltimore Ravens coming at 5. They're just such a well-run team that there's almost no holes really on this roster. And I think the talk about the offensive line has just gone so overblown. But I know a lot of people are going to point to that and be like, that's their weakness. What do you mean? I think Ronnie Stanley, if he gets hurt, Josh Jones has only played good at left tackle, so they have the perfect contingency cause there. So I'm not really worried about left tackle. Andrew Voorhees fell in the 7th round because he tore his Achilles at the combine. Otherwise, he should have gone way higher. He's a great gap scheme fit. There's your starting left guard for the next 10 years, Baltimore. Tyler Linderbaum's one of the best centers in football. And then you have some options there at right guard. You either go Patrick McCarry. I kind of like him as your sixth do-it-all offensive lineman. Or you just play Ben Cleveland and maybe he's your weak link. I'm okay with that. And I also like Roger Rosengarten. I fully admit that. Really light on his feet. We'll see what that anchor and his play strength looks like at the next level. I could see where that's a little iffy for the NFL. But worst comes to worst, Patrick McCarry is just like an average right tackle for you and replaces Roger Rosengarten. So I think the negative comments about the Ravens offensive line's gone too far. And then, yeah, it's a new defensive coordinator, but it's the same scheme. It's a lot of the same. They've only made that secondary better, and they have young talent. I think Odafe Oweh really started to turn on towards the second half last year. If he picks up where he left off, this team's gonna be really, really good all over again. Then can Lamar put it together in a playoff game? That's the big question this year for Baltimore. Lions coming at 4. To be the second best team in the NFC. I think Jared Goff's elite. I may think he's closer to good than great. Actually, I do think he's closer to good than great. But Ben Johnson, best offensive line in football. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hopefully get a step forward from Jameson Williams this year. Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. The offensive firepower plus Ben Johnson being back. Yeah, all that does kind of make Jared Goff have the perfect situation for him to thrive. And that defense, right? Like you draft 2 corners, you make a trade for a Carlton Davis. You're not letting that position be one of a weakness. Number 2, pass rusher, specifically at edge, other than Aiden Hutchinson, still TBD, right? Because Marcus Davenport hasn't played over 13 games in a season yet in his career, hasn't played more than 550 snaps in a single season. So TBD there, but you also get James Houston back. So could those two kind of part-time be that number 2 edge? I think they could both kind of fill in and together form that. But also DJ Reader is a huge addition, and you really can't undersell that because his run-stopping ability makes Aleem McNeil that much more clear-cut, 3-tech, pin your ears back, go get the quarterback, and really Aiden Hutchinson's going to be the leading sack guy on this team, and then it's probably Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader as those number 2 and 3 pass rush forces on this team. Hopefully Davenport proves me wrong, though. I'd love to be wrong about that, because then the Lions get really, really scary. I also want to just get those off the note, like Jack Campbell, I think he's going to bounce back here in year 2. I think he's going to be a really good player this year for the Lions. Houston Texans coming at number 3. They're my number 2 team in the AFC. I think they have the best roster of the AFC South, excluding quarterback, and they have the best quarterback of the AFC South. Stroud, Bobby Slowick scheme, they only get that much better at receiver by adding Stephon Diggs. That type of route running prowess in the Shanahan scheme. Are you kidding me? Joe Mixon's probably he is a better fit than Dameon Pierce is. So that's an upgrade at running back. The defense is only going to keep getting better as those young guys keep taking steps forward in the right direction. Oh, and by the way, they added Danielle Hunter, into the mix as well. So this team, I think Nick Caserio has kind of played his cards right. It was iffy at the beginning, right? He's not doing a whole lot to the roster. Then they finally get the Deshaun Watson trade, and he's been able to balance this out with, lots of young pieces. He's drafted well, and that's a big feather in his cap for sure. But he's also said, hey, well, we can win right now because of how good CJ Stroud is, and he's managed that perfectly. And even when you look at when Stroud's going to get paid, those big ticket items that they've spent money on right now are really not going to affect you once Stroud does get paid. So I think Nick Caserio really has played his cards right. So hopefully they don't go 7-10 and make me eat these words. I have a hard time thinking that's going to be the case though. And then we get the Super Bowl rematch. They're 2-1. Is anybody surprised? 49ers complete roster. They bring back Brandon Ayuk to tear out my heart as a Steelers fan. Just couldn't catch a win there. The defense, I think, is going to be even better this year. I love Renardo Green, and then you get Lenore full-time into the nickel. Man, I think this team's going to play more man coverage, and with that pass rush, even if it's just Nick Bosa, and I'm not loving the other edge guys, Bosa plus Hargrave, if you force a quarterback to hold on to the ball for 2.5 seconds, they're going to get there. One of those two guys is going to get there. I'm all in on the 40. Who isn't all in on the 49ers? I've actually seen a couple people not picking them to win the NFC West. Interesting. That feels interesting. But let me know if you have another team picking them, picking the NFC West. If I wasn't going to go to the 49ers, it's kind of a fun conversation to have. Who would be that team? And then the Chiefs. They have the best quarterback, in my opinion, the most talented quarterback of all time. They had, now you add Samaje Perine to be an upgraded Jerick McKinnon. Are you freaking kidding me? How do they keep getting away with this? Kingsley Suamataia, that looks like a hit in the second round. One of my favorite offensive tackles, preseason OT3. Not to pat myself in the back. We'll see how it plays on the field, but his movement skills, Patrick Mahomes takes the deepest drop of any NFL quarterback. They needed someone light on his feet, and Kingsley Suamataia is huge, but his agility on his feet is one of his best traits. So he's like the perfect guy to keep a clean pocket for someone who's going to take that deep of a drop. Juwan Taylor's also looked better this preseason. Love the interior, and whether or not they have Hollywood Brown week 1, which it sounds like they won't, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce. That's enough for me. Juju Smith-Schuster. That's enough for me to be excited. And then you add in the fact, like, once they have sets with Worthy and Hollywood Brown on the field, teams are going to have to give them 2 safety, 2 high shells. And they're just going to hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco. 2 safeties, Isaiah Pacheco. Wash, rinse, repeat. And the way that guy runs downhill, whew, good luck. And I also think this defense is still top tier. Yes, no L'Jarius Sneed, but Steve Spagnuolo throughout his entire Kansas, I mean, he's the guy who found L'Jarius Sneed. So, like, I have confidence that they'll be able to make that work and patch that up. It's going to be a little bit probably like TBD year 1, but, like, I still have a lot of confidence in one of the best, maybe the best defensive coordinator, true, just defensive coordinator, not head coaches that call plays, just defensive coordinators. In the NFL, and you have Chris Jones there, so when in doubt, like, bet on him. I also think year 2, Felix and Dike Ozama, year 3, George Karlaftis. I think there's enough things to go around there to improve the rest of that defensive line as well. But guys, that's going to do it for my 2024-25 preseason NFL power rankings. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. In a couple of days, I'm going to have my 2024-25 predictions, division winners, records, playoff picks, and Super Bowl champion crown of that. So be sure to come back to the channel for that. And real quick before I get out, if you made it this far, you're obviously a diehard, and I really appreciate you doing that, making this far in this video. It seriously means the world. So I wanted to ask you, I normally do this weekly throughout the season. Do you want to see that? Do you want to see it the week 5, week 9, week 13 mark, kind of first quarter, halfway, 3/4? Do you want to see it that kind of frequency? I don't know. I'm just kind of at the point now where my draft stuff does the best on the channel, and I think it's probably best for my channel to just become NFL draft focused. But I do like talking about all 32 teams, giving my thoughts, and I like talking about power rankings. They're kind of fun to make too. So, and they do okay on the channel. They're not bad, but I don't know. I'm just kind of at this point now where, like, I might just need to shift this full-time NFL draft and just kind of move things like this off to the side unless it's like the NFL preseason. So let me know your thoughts. Do you want to see more of these NFL power rankings, or is it time for me to just kind of transition into NFL draft, team building, free agency, all that sort of stuff that I really, really like talking about? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. I also should have an updated 2025 mock out in the next week or 2. So really excited about it because, yeah, now we're in the thick of it. College football's back. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling here. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.